Well, hello. I'm Hiram Simon, founder of WineWise, and the subject of today's discussion is Greece, a country that has always been dear to my heart, but one which I had not visited for 47 years until I recently went there in March of 2022, and I fell in love all over again with this bewitching country, which has a pretty irrefutable claim to being the most ancient wine producing culture, at least in Europe. It has competitors further east who say that they invented the wine, Armenia, Georgia. Some even say it started in Sumeria, but Greece is definitely the cradle of wine growing in Europe. And the Greeks brought the vine to Italy, they brought it to France, and who knows where else besides. It's a remarkable country in many ways. Few people know this fact about it because the image of Greece is one of island paradises, but in fact it is the most mountainous country in Europe. It is more mountainous even than Switzerland. Something like 85% of the Greek territory is considered to be mountain. And this is significant for wine and for vines because it means that a lot of Greek vineyards are planted at relatively high altitude, but it also means that they have very significant diurnal temperature changes. So hot days balanced by cold nights, which results in the remarkable proliferation of Greek wines that, despite coming from a southerly, rather warm climate, weigh in at unexpectedly light alcohol levels. And this is a beautiful paradox I find in Greece, that you have wines that are simultaneously Mediterranean in style, and yet they have some of the light touch that you find in more northerly climes. The two producers we're going to look at today are Tetramythos, who are on the Peloponnesian Peninsula, and Paterianakis in Crete. But let's start with Tetramythos. They are in a village called Anadiokopto in the viticultural DO of Achaia and in the general region of Patras. They have simply the most spectacular vineyards that can be imagined. Very high altitudes, going up to 1,000 meters, extraordinary views over the Mediterranean Sea. When I was there, the surrounding hills were all covered in snow, so it made for a fantastic contrast. They claim to have the cleanest water in Greece and the best light. And it's a relatively young winery, founded in the 1990s by the brothers Spanos, but really the personality behind this estate is a very charismatic chap called Panayotis Giannopoulos, whose nickname locally is Zappa, on account of his hair and his formerly luxuriant moustache. Panayotis has really developed an extraordinary reputation for this estate. They only have about 14 hectares of their own, but they buy grapes from a further 21 hectares owned by a bunch of other local growers. Everything, including the wines that the grapes that they buy, is certified organically cultivated. And in the last year or two, they have moved more and more in the so-called natural wine direction. You'll see that they have a couple of wines that bear the name nature on them, or natur on them. There's a Greek play on words here with the Greek letter that looks to us like an E, but yeah, they call the wines nature. Anyhow, they have a dizzy array of grapes from which they make well over 20 different wines. But the most important grape, I would argue, in their range is the grape Rhoditis, which is one of those white grapes whose skin turns dark with ripeness. Rhoditis is the Greek word for rose-colored, pink-colored, and indeed when the grapes are ripe, rather like Pinot Gris, for example, the grapes take on quite a tint, with the result that any wines made with significant skin contact from this grape can take on a darker hue. And it's a wonderfully aromatic floral grape with very, very good acidity, and they make both dry white wine from it and, very interestingly, Retsina in a couple of different versions. Retsina, of course, is the wine that most people know Greece for, to its cost, really, because it's never been associated with quality particularly, but Tetramythos made it their mission to treat Retsina seriously, and the first step was to make it from Rhoditis, which they considered to be a noble grape, whereas the vast majority of Retsina in Greece is made from the less significant, less important grape Savatiano. And they make it with pine resin that they draw from trees on their own property, and even the basic Retsina is given at least a partial aging in amphora. The nature example, which is made without sulfur added, is made 100% in amphora. And if you've got perhaps painful memories of Greek beach holidays with too much Retsina, they will be banished by an exposure to these two wines, which have a refinement and delicacy to them that you don't expect from that genre. And then amongst the many black grapes that they grow are Arioritico, which is considered one of the noble grapes of Greece, best known from the Nemea district, which makes grapes that are a bit, to my mind, wines a bit like Blaufränkisch in Austria. A certain grapiness, but also a certain delicious earthiness as well. And then something really special is the Mavro Calavritino grape, the black grape of Calavrita. Calavrita is a town in the Peloponnese that gives its name to the variety, and this is one of these ancient autochthonous grapes that makes wonderfully limpid and sappy and aromatic wine with a real light touch in it, lots and lots of penetration. So if you have not yet discovered the wines of Tetramythos, we invite you to do so. You'll find they're not only delicious and original, but absolutely remarkably inexpensive for their quality, and they've become the mainstay of our Greek portfolio, I'm tempted to say, over the last years, as people have increasingly recognized what an amazing proposition they offer. Thank you for your interest, and happy drinking.